everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. Joining me now is Congresswoman Dina Titus. Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
It has really been an exciting time for Las Vegas. As we know, the Super Bowl was last week, and it was really an astounding juxtaposition, especially when we think about 4 years ago, almost at this time, when the tourism and hospitality management industry was really ravaged by COVID. So to begin the conversation, I would love if you could talk to us about how Vegas specifically has bounced back since the start of the pandemic.
Well, you are exactly right. We were the hardest hit place in the country because we depend so much on hospitality. It was like a dystopian twilight zone. You could ride down the strip and all the hotels were closed down. So that is certainly not the image that most people have of Las Vegas. Now, however, we're the fastest recovering community in the country. I think once COVID lifted to some extent, people just wanted to get out and have fun, and where better to come than Las Vegas. After that, then the conventions began to come back, and now we are having more international tourism, so that's our focus. But yeah, we've had record numbers of small businesses start, which are ancillary to, of course, the Strip, which is in my district. We've got a record number of flights coming into the airport. You mentioned the Super Bowl, the highest betting ever on the Super Bowl. And remember, the F1 race we just had here, too, was very exciting and brought people from around the world. So we hope to see that continue.
This is a very optimistic outlook on the economy, optimistic outlook on tourism in general, and I'm wondering how Vegas did it.
Well, you know, it was a community effort. We are a strong union town, and so the unions were ready to go back to work, serve with the hospitality that we're known for. We took those stimulus dollars that came from the federal government and put them to work. We got the money out as fast as we could. I was also able to get money in the stimulus package that not only looked at unemployment, not only looked at population, but added unemployment to the formula. So we have a small population statewide, but since our unemployment was so high, we got an extra $1 billion. We also included restaurants in there and show venues and nonprofits, and all of that helped to bring back that economy.
So let's talk a little bit about the economy as a whole. And I want to first talk about sentiment, because according to a recent Pew Research Center survey, only 28% of Americans would categorize the economy as either excellent or good. This is up 9% from April of 2023, which is good that it's increasing, but the number 28% is still very low. So what do you think Democrats' economic pitch is?
Well, the confidence in the economy always lags behind the numbers, so I think you'll continue to see that grow. Second thing is that President Biden and a lot of his surrogates are now on the road telling people just what's in all those bills that we passed to stimulate the economy and to bring money back to businesses and to individual families. I think that's important. I sit on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. If you say, oh, we got money for infrastructure, people's eyes glaze over. But if you say, we got this money for this street where you live, or this crosswalk, or this bridge, and bring it home so people realize just what an impact it has on their daily lives, I think that will help to make a difference.
Respectfully, when you talk to voters all throughout the country, I have had the opportunity to do that. The top issue is the economy. No one I've talked to has exactly glowing feelings about it. They're saying my wallet hurts. The prices at the grocery store are increasing. So do you see Bidenomics as a strong pitch? Because as those poll numbers suggest, sentiment is low, and with Biden's name in Bidenomics, how is that correlation working?
Well, I don't think Bidenomics tells anybody anything. It's hard to say, and you don't know what it means. So I think we should quit using that term and just talk about some of the individual gains. For example, let's talk about bringing down the price of drugs and insulin. And then people start to think, oh, yeah, maybe that did make a difference. Or talk about getting access to internet. You know, often you think of the underserved areas as rural America, but it's not. It's the inner city now they can start to see that. I think what we have to be sure that we do is remind people to also be sure that they understand that it's sustainable, it's continuing to get better, not getting worse if you look at inflation and unemployment figures, and to convince them that not only is it not going away, but it's going to impact people up and down the economic spectrum, not just those at the top, but as the president likes to say, build the country from the middle out.
How do you convince those people then? How do you think Democrats can improve their messaging on the economy? Because right now it seems that they are on defense, and the overarching theme of the economy is bad, recession is looming, prices are high, that's succeeding here.
Well, it has been, because that's the way that the Republicans have pitched it, because they don't have anything of their own to run on. But now we've got to remember that the economy is only one piece of the issues that are facing this country. Abortion will be an issue that will come to the top as we begin to look at the next campaign. Look what's happening around the world, whether it's Israel or China or Russia now, Ukraine, all of that will gain importance. I think one of the things that we will start to see that number improve is when you have just two candidates facing off, and the Democrats make the contrast of what they have done and what Donald Trump did or proposes to do. What he proposes to do is roll back all of our accomplishments. They're still talking about limiting Social Security. Now that gets seniors very agitated, of course. They're talking about taking away that ability to negotiate drug prices. The more we talk about that, the more people realize we're pushing forward, they're dragging back.
I would love to read some stats to you. They're a bit of a mixed bag, and I would love for you to react to them. The S&P 500 last week made history, closing at a record high end-of-day price. The January jobs report was much stronger than expected, but January's CPI report showed inflation was much higher than anticipated last month. So, Congresswoman, if you could you read the tea leaves? What do you make of these numbers?
Well, you can pick and choose numbers. I could pick some numbers that show the number of new businesses started by minority communities, the number of women in minority communities who are now employed who weren't before, the number of new jobs created. You mentioned yourself that was, and inflation, you said, was higher than the previous month, but it has been steadily going down. Our economy is very strong, has been said by even Republican pundits and economists. So you need to look at the whole picture rather than just picking out a few.
When you are going on the road, talking to your constituents, talking to voters specifically and personally, what's your economic pitch to them?
Well, one of the things the voters are still concerned about are prices at the grocery store. And Democrats have said we've still got work to do. That's why we want to keep moving forward. And I think that's where we need to show some progress, be sure that that inflation continues to go down, keep interest rates down, and that's kind of what we talk about. But here in Nevada, there's not so much of an emphasis on that because we are booming today compared to where we were 3 or 4 years ago. You ask people if you're better off, that certainly they've got a job or they've opened a business or they got some of the PPP loans, you know, all of that. So it's not so much an issue on the street as people ask about the right to choice, for example.
I know you mentioned that Democrats do have some work there in lowering prices at the grocery store. Inflation is coming down. Prices, as we know, has remained high. The Treasury Secretary said in the Senate last week prices were unlikely to fall. Do you think that this will in any way alienate voters, or do you think other issues supersede this one?
Well, I don't think it will be the only issue. Certainly, as I mentioned, choice stays right there at the top of the list. And the international affairs that usually don't make much of a difference now are certainly at front and center. And so I think people are more focused on those than they have been in the past. We're going to continue to try to work to get those prices down, but you need to remind people that maybe the price of eggs is up a little, but now you've got a job that's paying you more, and look towards raising wages, because corporations are still making an awful lot of money, and we need to be sure that other people benefit from that recovery.
I know you're saying other issues obviously matter in 2024. I do want to ask a quick question about something that we saw out of New York this week. We saw Democrats flip the seat that George Santos used to sit in. What do you make of this? Do you think this is a bellwether event heading into 2024?
Well, I do because, the Democrat who won had been in Congress before. He's considered a moderate member. He didn't get on the defensive. He talked about the things that Democrats have accomplished and want to accomplish. Wasn't extreme on either end, and people believed it. You know, he talked directly to, like, I'm one of you, and this is what we need to get done. So I think it is a bellwether. I think you'll see us pick up seats in the House for sure.
And what about President Biden's foreign policy? Obviously, right now we are seeing a few wars throughout the world. What do you make of this? What's the pitch to voters there?
Well, I don't think it's a pitch. I think it's giving people more information. One of the things you look at is here the Republicans who said they wouldn't fund Ukraine if they didn't have a border deal. Well, we got a bipartisan border deal, and now they won't fund that. People understand that Ukraine is kind of the front line for Europe and democracy. If Ukraine falls to Russia, they're moving right on to Moldova, Hungary, Poland, the Baltics. This is not the end. This is the beginning. And people start to see democracy being threatened, and they get it. They know that if we don't send aid in the form of our old equipment, as opposed to money, like a lot of people try to portray it, but it's not. It's money that's spent here to build new equipment, and we send them their old. But nonetheless, if Ukraine falls and Russia invades a NATO country, remember, we're obligated to support a NATO country, and we'll be sending sons and daughters over there to fight. That's when it gets really real for people to understand the implications of those wars.
Congresswoman, I brought up that exact point when I was talking to two of your Republican colleagues, one last week and one this week, and they said they would not support funding for Ukraine, full stop. I said, people have said that if we don't fund Ukraine, Russia steamrolls Ukraine, and then there's World War III on your hands. What do you make of some Republican colleagues that don't support funding for Ukraine? What's your message to them?
Well, they have a lack of knowledge of history is one thing. And then, I don't know, they've proven they don't care that much about democracy. I mean, they're all supporting this notion of the false elections, supporting Donald Trump, who led the insurrection on the Capitol. Democracy doesn't seem to be a real priority. And they use that false argument that, oh, we're sending our money to Ukraine instead of helping people at home, which goes back to my point that we are helping people at home because we will be using money to build new equipment here, which means new good jobs here, and sending the old resources to Ukraine. I think that they are misinformed, and I know the big leader of that is Marjorie Taylor Greene, and I certainly don't agree with her on anything or have much respect for either her intellect or her political positions.
Looking into 2024, the presidential election, obviously, I want to talk about your home state, Nevada. Do you think that this state is safe for President Biden, or it will turn red?
Well, twice it's turned down Trump, so we know the state doesn't support Trump. But Nevada's always a swing state. We're a classic purple state. So Democrats work hard to be sure we keep it in our column. There'll be a lot of action here because we've got a big Senate race that's one of those that's listed as must save. Then all three of the House races are on their front line list of the DCCC. So we'll be working very hard, but we're optimistic because the coalition that Biden put together here, whether it's seniors, we have a large retirement community, universities for young people here. All this is in my district. Labor, very strong culinary and building trades unions. So Hispanic community, large and growing. Asian Pacific Island community, large and growing. I think that coalition will come back together because they see the overturning of voting rights, overturning of human rights, overturning LGBT rights, women's rights. That starts to really hit home the more Donald Trump is out there on the campaign trail. You see it.
Do you think then that President Biden is the best choice for Democrats for 2024, or is this just a vote against Donald Trump?
Oh, I think that the president was here recently and had a very warm reception, and they respect the president's longtime service, his experience, his knowledge, and people all around the world have that same feeling. So I've been riding with Biden from the beginning, and I'm not changing my mind.
Riding with Biden for 2024, but either way, in 2028, there will be a future, there will be a new generation, there'll be a future without Biden. What do you think that Democratic Party looks like?
Well, the Democratic Party looks like the country. We always have. We're very diverse, and we're having stronger voices from different parts of the community, different parts of the country, different ethnic groups, but young people are certainly more engaged. Young people care about human rights. You see all these protests in terms of Gaza and human rights. They care about women's rights, and they care about the environment. And certainly in the West, the issue of the environment is getting increasingly important. But the Democratic Party will reflect the national demographic scene. I think there will be some competition for who will be the nominee. Certainly the vice president will. I think Secretary of Transportation will throw his hat in the ring. I think you'll maybe see some governors come out. So it'll be a lively campaign, no question.
Ma'am, thank you so much for your time. Congresswoman Titus, thank you again for joining me. You're welcome back anytime.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.